among developed nations, 35%. And shoot, just a few miles to the north of here, Canada has a 15% rate. And I hear manufacturers talking all the time about having to make the tough decision about investing in a new plant or a new opportunity right across the border in Canada rather than here in the United States because of those tax policies. On regulations, there's a $1.8 trillion cost associated with regulations on business in this country. And just for manufacturers, according to MAPI, some 2,000 regulations, 2,000, have been imposed on manufacturers in the last 30 years. Now, those of you who are in the audience who are manufacturers, I know you've read every single page of those 2,000 regulations, and you're in full compliance. But imagine that. Can't we do a little bit better in this country and streamline that process? On energy, it's actually a bright spot. Because of our energy policies, there's a slight cost advantage when it comes to energy costs in this country, and we need to drive that number up. You know, shale gas and the shale gas revolution has revolutionized how we look at energy and the cost of energy and the access to energy in this country. In fact, a study that we did with PwC showed that because of the shale revolution, another 1 million jobs can be created in this country, 1 million manufacturing jobs can be created in this country by the year 2025. And then there are issues that we hear about and we all experience every single day, and that is the workforce and the shortage of skilled workers. 600,000 jobs in manufacturing go unfilled today because manufacturers simply can't find folks with the right skills to do the jobs. Our Manufacturing Institute is working very hard and is in partnership with many folks here in this state to try to rectify that situation. But that's a long-term prospect, and I was so happy that Secretary Gutierrez was talking about comprehensive immigration reform. That is a key priority for the National Association of Manufacturers and for manufacturers all across this country. So there's a lot to do. There's no question about that. And you know, before I had the job that I have now, I had the honor of working for many years for another guy who got it, a fellow by the name of George Allen in Virginia. And I had the opportunity to serve as his chief of staff and in his cabinet when he was governor of the state in the 1990s. And on day one, he had a focus much like Governor Snyder's. And he sat down the entire cabinet and he said, "You are to be my competitiveness cabinet. And every single day that you come to work, I want you to think about what you're doing to encourage investment and create jobs in the state. And if you're doing something else, quit doing it." It was really that simple. And that's the kind of focus that we've got to have in states all across this country, just like you do here in Michigan. But also, we need that focus at the federal level. We can't have folks talking about manufacturing and creating a manufacturing environment but not doing anything about it. We can't simply have Congressman Upton and Congressman Dingell, Congressman Camp, and Congressman Rogers trying to carry that ball. We need a unified effort from every single member of Congress, from the administration, and everybody else who has the honor of holding office. They owe it to this country, and we need to hold them accountable for it. I'm so impressed with the Detroit Regional Chamber, and I'm so impressed with the state of Michigan. You all are doing the right things. Keep it up, because you're making the rest of the country pretty envious of what you've got here. I'm really thrilled to be here with you today, and I'm really looking forward to this great conversation this afternoon with Andra Rush, Mark Weishaar, and Mark Davidoff. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be here with you today.
Please welcome Founder, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Rush Group, Andra Rush, Chief Executive Officer and President of Sturgis Molded Products, Mark Weishaar, and Michigan's Managing Partner for Deloitte LLP, Mark Davidoff.
Yeah, we got a few extra chairs.
Okay.
Jay, thank you for those very insightful comments, and Andra and Mark, welcome to the panel. If manufacturing is the backbone of America, then I would stipulate that Michigan is the nerve center. And I think that that is proven today with this illustrious panel talking about this important topic on Mackinac Island. Manufacturing is a proven key driver for economic growth, attracting investments, spurring innovation, and creating high-value jobs. That's why for several years, Deloitte has been working with the World Economic Forum, the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, and the Manufacturing Institute, the research arm of Jay's organization, to identify challenges and opportunities facing manufacturing. In a host of studies, Deloitte has interviewed hundreds of senior manufacturing executives worldwide and has conducted studies of the general public to gain a running view of the U.S. perception on manufacturing. So let's look at some high-level facts before we dive into our conversation. First, we see a view of the 10 major drivers of the nation's competitiveness. As depicted in this model, these drivers of competitiveness are compressed by both market forces and government policy. No surprises on this list. Areas of daily focus for any manufacturer, whether you're a publicly held global company or a private entrepreneur like Andra and Mark. From talent to supply chain, from infrastructure to healthcare, on a daily basis, the manufacturing fabric of our country is dealing with these important issues. Many of these issues resonate in Michigan as well, from the talent development of our universities and community college network to our local market and how it measures up to other states, and of course, infrastructure, or what we might call roads and a bridge. Any one of these factors could be constraining, but when you combine many or all of them, it could be stifling. Deloitte's work with the World Economic Forum has resulted in the report Manufacturing for Growth. This report identifies key concerns and recommendations for action. First, the concerns. Regulatory uncertainty. From the fiscal cliff to the sequester, you can't make a rational decision if you can't understand the rules of the game. How we protect the uniqueness of the American spirit. Entrepreneurial leadership, innovative capabilities, and venture capital, all grounded in a strong and clear regulatory foundation, is our secret sauce. And how do we inspire government policies that stimulate investment and growth and provide a level global playing field? And the recommendations, which align very neatly with the measures of the nation's competitiveness in manufacturing, and we believe form the basis for a strategic plan for driving growth and employment. Promote the right environment for growth, stoke the fires to build a continuous and ready skilled workforce, and reduce uncertainty on generational issues such as deficit and energy independence, and maybe, just maybe, you provide the basis for a manufacturing evolution. Public perception. Bottom line, Americans love manufacturing. A vast majority believe that manufacturing leads to economic prosperity, improves the standard of living, and is essential to our national security. Manufacturing is the key to reducing the unemployment rate. In fact, our perception survey shows Americans want a stronger manufacturing sector and are not comfortable with the stability of that sector today. In addition, we believe there is a desire to recapture the high calling of manufacturing as a career in this country. Now, yesterday, we heard from a number of important leaders. Our governor said we need to embrace manufacturing. We need to make Made in Michigan a global brand once again, and we are the center of innovation. Governor Bush told us that government policy can be a drag on progress. Secretary Gutierrez warned us of the demographic time bomb and how immigration might be the solution. And Robert Johnson reminded all of us of our responsibility to drive employment in the urban core. All of those themes run deep into the manufacturing sector. So panel, let's get to it. Let's find some solutions. Jay, I'd like to start actually to reflect on your comment and your remarks about the 20% difference in the cost of manufacturing in the US compared to the rest of the world. And I'd actually like to ask Andra and Mark, who are two phenomenally successful entrepreneurs in this area, how you did it. How did you punch through that gap and become so successful? And what lessons can others learn?
Andra?
Oh, I thought you were starting with Jay. Sorry.
Andra?
Let me tell you, it's perseverance, it's hard work, and it takes a team of people. But what I'm most proud of is when you put that goal out and that vision and you share that with other people, you plant a seed, then it starts to grow, and then you get a little bud, and then you get the plant. So 28 years ago, I planted a seed that I wanted to create opportunity in underserved markets and underserved areas, primarily thinking at that time Native American reservations where my family's from.
Sure.
Started in trucking with 3 trucks and being someone's last hope, and grew that to 1,800. And then what we did was we said we wanted to have more impact in the automobile and have higher value. So we were able to create Dakota Integrated Systems 10 years ago, and then just 1 year ago, we had 35 people that we hired for the city of Detroit for Detroit manufacturing, and today we have over 650 people, 70% from the city of Detroit.
Phenomenal.
Isn't that great? Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
So to build on that a bit, I think you go through as entrepreneurs, and I didn't start our business and take the risk to start it, but I've been there for a long time and built it up from a smaller business to a much larger business. I believe that you go through a period of time where you're trying to build your own wealth, you're trying to build a little bit of security for your family perhaps, and then you come to a realization that there's much more to it than that, and it's a lot bigger world and there's a lot more responsibility. And I've come to that recently, and Andra is an inspiration actually. Doing this in downtown Detroit, doing this in the city of Detroit, I should say, hiring these people who are disadvantaged and teaching them skills and getting them to have the pride of a job and the things that she has done has caused me to want to do the same thing. And we're currently undertaking a plan in Kalamazoo, Michigan, where we're going to try to build a plant in downtown Kalamazoo. We're going to try to get a major customer to commit to us, and then we're going to hire a bunch of people who are currently on government aid. And I think that's our responsibility. That's all our responsibility in this room. It's public policy responsibility, but it's the business leaders' responsibility, really, to create these jobs. And we really need to quit thinking quite so much about profits, and we really need to think about jobs and livelihoods and helping our communities.
Jay, I'm just wondering whether you see that across your member base with regards to a return to the urban core for manufacturing centers.
Yes. I think it really depends on the state. And again, if you have a state that's really focused on encouraging and inviting investment and has a hospitable business environment, you're going to see that type of growth in that state. And the same is true for counties and cities and other localities. It's a partnership. So the state and the locality, if they have a good partnership and they have an inviting business environment, then you're going to see that kind of growth. But the one thing that impresses me about Andra and Mark is, they stuck with it. They wanted to achieve. They wanted to succeed regardless of what the outside factors were. And you see that really with manufacturers who have that entrepreneurial spirit. They're going to succeed no matter what Washington or the states are throwing at them. And I guess my belief, and I think most manufacturers' belief, is that imagine what could be created if Washington would just get its act together and reduce those corporate taxes and streamline the regulatory process.
Sure.
And make sure that we have affordable and accessible energy supply for the long term. I mean, we have very, very successful folks in this country, even with all the challenges that Washington throws at them. When states get it right, and they help businesses succeed, I think it's a model for the country.
So let's stay on the government theme and let's bring it down to the Michigan level. We've got a great governor who's making real change and we can feel it every day. What else do we need done locally, statewide, state policy perspective to get to the next level? Mark and Andra, your perspective, then Jay, maybe you can fill in the gap with what you see in other states that we might be able to transform here in Michigan. Wish list.
Wish list. Obviously, we would like to have incentives to invest in underserved communities. I think that's very important. I think you have to have a trajectory that says you have so many people that have been unemployed for so long, and now we're doing it together. The state, city, Ford Motor Company, it takes everyone working in the same direction. However, I still see some barriers that I'd like to see lifted. For instance, if some people don't work out on our team because not everyone made the team, but if they were there 91 days, they're on unemployment again. And it's an easy path to take, and I think it should be more challenging in that regard. I think we should have some incentives when you do hire people that have been underemployed for quite a period of time. Maybe give them a break on their state tax, as well as those corporations. And I also think we need to really invest in infrastructure and roads because they are collapsing in our state.
Sure.
So I've always said, just tell me what the rules are and get out of my way. But that's a little unrealistic when you have other states that are telling Andra, we'll move your family and friends down here for free and bring your business down to us. So it's not always level, so it can't just be tell us what the rules are and get out of the way. But my wish list, my biggest wish list would be in the late 80s, early 90s, all through the 90s, we had so many Michigan companies move their operations down to Mexico. And most of the big tier ones are now all over Mexico. And what I think they did was try to find cheap labor, and they found cheap labor, but they didn't understand the total cost of ownership of their products. And if you look at our little company in Sturgis, we've done amazing innovation, amazing lean technologies, utilizing automation and process monitoring and things like that. We are way lower cost than Mexico. We benchmark that every quarter against Mexican companies, very good Mexican companies, and we are a low-cost producer in Michigan, and we can be. So I would love, my wish list would be somehow finding public policy leaders, getting with business leaders, big tier one guys, and saying, move your stuff back to Michigan, or make the next investment you make in Michigan. I think there's so much potential for that. So many little entrepreneurial companies like ours will show them our innovation and our ability to be low-cost guys for them. And we just got to have the chance. We need more customers in Michigan for companies like ours.
Jay, reaction?
Well, harking back to my role in Virginia, I had a governor who did exactly that. He traveled everywhere, and he talked about Virginia's competitive tax rate. He talked about our very streamlined regulatory system. He talked about our education system, which we were working to improve. He talked about, at that time, Virginia being the northernmost state with a right-to-work law. Well, you guys blew that out of the water here, let me tell you. And that's a competitive advantage. And I know Governor Snyder is on the road and doing exactly what you're talking about. And it really does matter. And I'll tell you, forums like this, I've had the opportunity to be able to travel around the country and meet with large groups of manufacturers and other business leaders. I've never been to anything that has this much energy. I mean, this is a tremendous, tremendous group. You put all this energy together and you leave here with that same energy. I mean, don't lose that spirit. There's no limit to the great things that can be achieved in Detroit and in Michigan.
So let's move to immigration. We talked a lot about that yesterday. We had some great discussion about where we are as a country philosophically and from a policy perspective on the immigration issue. Our governor has been on that issue from day one about how that's an economic driver and the right thing to do. Where do you think we need to go with immigration? And how would that affect your two businesses in particular?
Well, I think when you look at the aging population in America, we do need more people. I also think that there's enough unemployed or underemployed Americans that we should put our people to work first. That being said, I have a transportation company, and we will have a significant driver shortage in the next 2 to 3 years. Some estimate that it'll be 20,000 to 50,000, but the other estimates that no one's counting is the retiring truck drivers that are averaging about 60 years old driving on the roads today, and we think it's going to be more like 200,000 to 300,000. If you go to recruit on immigration currently, the visas are gone in a day. So they need to expand that, and I think that the underrepresented immigration or workers that are here, there should be a path to citizenship.
So these are clearly complex issues. There's probably not enough incentive to force people to go get jobs, so it's hard sometimes for the Americans to want those jobs. Those are $10, $12, $14 an hour jobs, and they can make a lot of money by not working, not that much, but a fair amount. And so that's part of an issue. I don't want to get into immigration because I don't know very much about it. I know there's a tremendous amount of illegals in Sturgis. People estimate as many as 35% of the city, and we can't hire them. And they are good workers, and they are looking for jobs. And so if there was some way for that, to change, I think it could affect our business very positively. So I'd be in favor of some sort of worker program, but I also think we had to have more incentive to force our people back to work rather than be on so much government assistance.
Jay?
Well, I think for manufacturers across the country,
Don't worry, it's only
there's
a
a
bat.
bird or a bat there. That's interesting.
I think that's an illegal bat, by the way.
Must be an immigrant from Transylvania. That was bad. So, you know, for manufacturers, immigration is clearly a workforce issue, but it's also a moral issue. So, you know, when you're dealing with the workforce, and Andra referenced the aging workforce, I get from manufacturers across the country anywhere from an average age of the workforce between 48 and 52, some as high as 58. I mean, you think about that, and you think about the loss of the manufacturing workforce. Couple that with the fact today that we have 600,000 unfilled jobs because of lack of the right skill set. You've got to do a lot of different things. Our Manufacturing Institute is working, and you referenced this, Mark. Our Manufacturing Institute is working on skill certification programs. We're working on inspiring young people to get involved in manufacturing careers. And we're also working on a program to recruit returning military personnel to manufacturing jobs. But immigration reform is a real key, I think, to filling this skills gap. And we believe, as the NAM, we believe in a comprehensive solution. We think that worrying about the caps on H-1Bs or the low-skilled programs is really kind of a fool's errand, because we have such a need right now. We can always revise those numbers in the future. But most importantly, we think there's a moral component of this that's important for the nation, and that is a pathway to citizenship. And if you take our current policy to its logical conclusion, and you throw 11 to 13 million people out of this country, you destroy communities. And manufacturers invest a lot in building communities and making them stronger.
Right.
And you rip apart the fabric of who we are as a nation.
Well, I'm confident that we as a society will find the right path on this one. And
I think we're on the way.
Yeah.
The Senate looks like they're going to pass something, and I'm very hopeful that they pass it with a large enough number that it sends a signal to the House that this country wants this to happen.
Right. So focus back on Michigan again. I'd like Andra and Mark, you to reflect on the past few years. So if you go back to 2008, 2009 at this conference, much different feel, much different tone. I'm sure that you were feeling that on a daily basis in your businesses. And we've had so many changes that have caused us to feel better and hopeful about where we are today. But what do you think were one or two of the most important changes that were made in the past few years that gave you, new traction, new hope to make new investments, to create new jobs? And how do we leverage that to get to the next level?
Well, that's pretty complex, because going through 2008 and 2009, I didn't know if we would be here the next day. I'd say, hey, I'm the president today, but I might be driving tomorrow.
And think about that. I think we sort of all take that for granted.
We had 90% of our people laid off in February of 2009.
I think that we forget quickly, how painful that period was, and I don't think we should leave that behind, because there's a lot of lessons in that.
I think for me, there were a lot of lessons. Someone said success is when you stare at death and then live through it, and so it felt very close to that. But what we came out of it with is a tighter relationship with our customers, with our suppliers, and with our employees, and try to over-communicate what we knew and what we didn't know. I think the government assistance for GM and Chrysler was crucial and critical. And I believe if that hadn't been done, we would have probably been in a depression. So that cohesiveness and that strategy, the auto industry, again, going back to manufacturing, really set the foundation to create opportunity here in our country. And you had high oil prices. As soon as that hit, that strategy of offshoring and to low-cost countries and bringing it onshore kind of was broken. So I would say seeing the lower oil prices, the auto industry setting great expectations, all of us had to annihilate excess costs everywhere.
Right.
And those that survived, I think, had stronger discipline.
Built stronger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think talking about those that survived, excuse me, those that didn't survive, I think had bad business models or didn't quite have the costs right for the most part. And I think that's made us all a lot stronger. Our competition right now is a lot of really strong companies that force us every day to get better, force us to improve what we're doing every day. And I think that with the weaker companies going out of business, those of us who survived this thing have come out that much stronger and that much more competitive.
Sure.
You know,
Okay, please.
to Mark's point, if you came out of the recession, you are definitely much stronger. And what we hear a lot in Washington is if you'll first hear this conversation about strengthening manufacturing, and then you'll hear folks say, well, I just want to really strengthen advanced manufacturing. Well, let me tell you, if you came out of that recession, you are by definition an advanced manufacturer, because you are, because you are productive, you understand how to take advantage of technology, and you're much smarter and leaner, and you're clean, and you're technology driven, and frankly, pretty cool in the eyes of, I think, young people in what you produce. So we'd like to make sure everybody understands that manufacturing today is by definition advanced manufacturing, and we want to support it all.
So John McColta spoke to us this morning and said that his new theme is Be for Something. But his old theme he mentioned today was cohesion. And he has said for a number of years that we as a state didn't have cohesion, meaning that when outsiders looked in to make investment, they saw the way we acted and the way we talked and the way we behaved, and they said, you're not speaking with one voice. When you get one voice, call me. Do we have cohesion now? From a local perspective, do you feel that?
I think we definitely do. I mean, I'm from West Michigan, not originally, but I'm in West Michigan the last 20 years. And just seeing this Detroit-centric group here is really amazing. And understanding the things that the three panelists we had this morning were fantastic, teaching us about what Dan Gilbert is doing and what Roger Penske is doing and what the state is doing. And it's amazing, and we need to get that story out. West Michiganders mostly understand, I do clearly, that if we don't have a strong Detroit, we don't have a strong state. And I think if we can get the story out and we can get some of this momentum that's going on right now, especially in the downtown core area and the things that Andra's doing, it's just amazing story. And we're not telling even the people in West Michigan, let alone telling everyone about it. And so I think that the cohesion between the state and the city and the appropriate people all coming down on these difficult issues and finding solutions. And I think as the whole Detroit Chapter 9 thing rolls out, hopefully it never happens, but as our treasurer said today, we'll see where that goes in the next couple of weeks, but then we have to follow that up with a tremendous story of what's beyond the troubles we're in right now, because the story beyond that is really outstanding. And Jay just said up there that, you know, people are envious of Detroit right now. People are looking in here and seeing all the action going on and saying, wow, this is really special. And so I think a lot of that is a result of the cohesion that is happening.
Jay, do you perceive that? I mean, what I'm talking really about is when somebody from outside of the U.S., for example, is looking for inbound investment and they're looking to figure out which state to land in. Are we back on the list?
Yeah, I think Michigan's back on the list, and frankly, I think you have other competitors in other states that also get it and also understand that they have to speak with one voice. And you know, there's been a theme in the past few panels about that starting at the top, which means the governor. So you have a governor who gets it, and you have local leaders who get it, and they're working together. You also have to have that same cohesion at the national level, and you have to have a president who puts the focus of economic development and growth top of the agenda. And it's hard to do in Washington because there's a lot of stuff going on, as we all know. So states get it, but without that federal partner, I think it becomes, it creates a hurdle that's unnecessary. If you look at other countries where they have kind of that vertical cohesion from the leader of the country on down to the localities, Singapore is a great example, and others, it's pretty easy to attract businesses there because there is this understanding that they want to grow, and every level of government gets it. So it's great that we have states that get it. Now we need the federal government to be that partner as well.
Sure, good point. So last evening, Jay, you and I had a chance to be with the business leaders from Michigan at the governor's residence to talk about life and I think we probably spend 75% of our time talking about healthcare
Yeah.
and Affordable Care Act and everything that means. And I think that we read what's in the paper, we sort of hear what's on the news, but I'd be interested to know, Andra and Mark, what does it really mean to you on a daily basis and over the next number of months and into 2014 as private entrepreneurs who have individuals working for you? What are you doing today to prepare? What does it mean
And
for
do
you?
you even know what it means, right?
Right.
Well, here, just to follow up on the last point.
Yeah, please.
I think some states
Excuse
get
me,
it.
the bat is
There's
behind.
the bat behind
That's
me.
okay.
I'm the bat woman
I'll
now.
keep an eye on it.
All right. I'll be the bat woman. I've been worse. But some states really get it in the marketing position because when they approach you to have you invest in their state or community. I'll give an example of South Carolina. I was told that I would get all my key executives transferred for free, $9,000 each, that I'd get exempt from state taxes, that they would help offset my capital investment for a new building, for new roads and infrastructure. I needed training. They brought Clemson University on the sales call. So it was 3 people that all I would need to do is call them and to come down there. And when I had all these price pressures on how do you keep this transportation company, which is all I had at the time, it's tough. But I didn't want to leave Michigan. And several people that I speak with say Michigan's attractive, and we are starting to get it, but it's still a maze. For me, I had to call everyone I knew and friends of people I knew, and I got a great help from the DEGC and MEDA and so many other, MEDC and everyone, but it's still more difficult in real life than on the cohesion. I think everyone agrees that we should make it easier.
Right.
I don't know if there's experience there. Now, healthcare.
Oh, wait, who's glad that Andra stayed in Michigan? Anybody?
Me too. I'm glad to.
All right, so let's get to healthcare. What does it
healthcare.
mean?
Well, I didn't read all 20,000 pages or whatever that is. Sorry.
I don't think anybody did.
So.
Get you a 3,000-page executive summary if you'd like.
Oh, that's the executive summary? Oh, my. I think healthcare is a complex issue, but we have to address it. We've been kicking it down the road, just like the energy policy. How the reform got in, that seems a little strategic, but I don't know if it was well thought out. But its intention, the intention was in the right place. The execution is going to be enormously difficult for us. It's higher. It's a higher part of our.
But how are you
compensation.
figuring out what you have to do? Did you have to hire somebody? Are you? I mean, what do you do? You got so much to deal with. And
Well,
be
I'm
ready.
talking to Florine Marks at Weight Watchers, and
There
I'm
you
bringing
go.
6 weeks body makeover to my team and saying, okay, let's just be healthy.
Eat well and be healthy,
You
right.
know? And the top 300 drugs that everyone seems to be on in America, you can get them at Walmart's for $2 if you buy generic. So we educate that way. But
Okay.
I have no clue on the real program, how to navigate through it. I was going to call your firm after
Please do.
this meeting here.
I think it's a very difficult issue. We certainly have tried to skirt the issue for a long time by hiring temps. If they're perfect attendance, et cetera, for 6 months, then they can come on board and be full-time employees and have insurance. So, you know, our businesses, I think, in a lot of ways, our smaller businesses are doing a lot of things, spending a lot of money to avoid the issues as opposed to trying to work to better our businesses. And that's always a bad situation. And healthcare is really complex right now. We're kind of learning as it's going along. We're learning it through a lot of outside potential suppliers who come in and tell us what the rules are going to be or what they are. And so far that's all free. We don't have to hire consultants to do that for us. But I think as we get closer and closer to implementation, it's going to be a very difficult issue. It's certainly going to add, a couple bucks an hour to our wage rate, not to our wage rate, but to our cost of our employees. And that's going to make it harder and harder to be competitive. So it's a very big issue for us.
So Jay, you must be on the phone a friend list right now. How
What?
are you helping your members?
Well, we're trying to figure it out as well. There is no clarity coming out of Washington on this. And I think that it's kind of that old adage, be careful what you ask for. I think the administration is starting to say, gosh, what have we done, and how are we going to effectuate this thing? I don't really know any manufacturer that has any idea what they're going to do when this thing is fully implemented. And the fact, Mark, that you say that it's going to add cost is a direct validation that this thing was a failure from the start. Because the premise was, we're going to lower costs for businesses, we're going to provide better access, and we're going to provide better health care. And all we've heard throughout the last few years is, my costs are going to go up, I may have to just drop health care altogether and pay the quote-unquote fine. Then my employees, who by the way are my most valuable resource, are going to be on their own trying to figure out this mess, try to figure out state exchanges or federal exchanges or whatever. And frankly, we didn't do what it took to fix healthcare. We didn't provide interstate competition. We didn't reform our tort laws to drive down the cost of healthcare. We've only made the problem worse, and I don't think we know how bad we made it at this point.
Well, obviously, it's very concerning if we have two very successful entrepreneurs sitting here today who know every facet of their business and haven't had the time or the capacity or the energy to figure out
Exactly.
what they're. I'm not making a political statement, but I'm saying from a process perspective, from an on-the-ground perspective, this is where it's all going to happen, and somehow we have to get over that knowledge base because it's here. So
That's exactly right.
So in our last few minutes, part of the purpose of this, as we saw earlier today with Nancy's report, is to come up with a to-do list. And we've talked about some things today that I think could be on that to-do list, but I wanted to sort of wrap this up with some consensus on what we think should be on the to-do list with regard to the manufacturing in our state and getting to the next level.
I think on the to-do list, it should be more about matching the capital investments that companies that manufacture here in Michigan, and I would say in our country. I would put out a federal wish list that said you get a month exemption if you're corporations and you have profits offshore. You can bring them in a month for no extra tax, as long as you promise to invest 10% of that in underserved communities. I think that would be huge, and it would create enormous amount of jobs. I think for talent development, we want to attract talent, and we talk about Ohio and Indiana and other states. I would, if I were governor for the day, I would offer that anyone that went to our universities in Michigan, we would offset that, kind of like what Dan Gilbert did and said, I'll give you $25,000 to move to the city of Detroit. I would give them the same incentive to come to our state. And lastly, we pre-fund education for all our employees, and I wouldn't mind a match of that pre-fund.
Okay, so more on the incentive side. Mark?
Yeah, I think all those are really excellent points, especially the repatriation of dollars that are currently being held in foreign accounts. Just a huge national opportunity for us, I think, to force reinvestment back into the U.S. So that's my number one item, is really, again, getting our governor or getting someone to get these guys in a room and say, even if it's just for your patriotic duty, bring jobs back to the U.S., bring jobs back to Michigan, create an environment where entrepreneurs can thrive and become suppliers to those companies. Read a book recently by Jim Clifton, who is the chairman of Gallup, full of data and stats like Mark and Jay have. But his point was there's going to be a jobs war in this world. And the people who are going to thrive are the people who are going to be able to attract those talented people and then innovate. Talent leads to innovation, innovation leads to prosperity. There's no question about that. And we're going to have to find a way to get better talent through our high schools and our community colleges at the technical levels, but then also at the higher levels to compete, as Michelle Rhee was talking about today. If our math skills are 25th in the world, we're not doing it right now, and we got to find a way to, through education, to improve that. So I don't have any particular solutions exactly, but those are the kinds of issues we have to deal with.
Jay, real quick, is there anything from another state that we should be doing here?
Well, I think I'd take it up to 30,000 foot and say that it's very important to hold elected leaders' feet to the fire, even your friends. And you've got tremendously powerful delegation in Congress. So Congressman Chairman Camp will be helping to shepherd through tax reform. He's doing a great job. It's important for everybody here to make sure that he knows that we support growth and competitiveness in a new tax code. Chairman Upton is trying to help increase energy supply in our country. And on the innovation front that you mentioned, Senator Stabenow has been a great leader in that. So support those leaders when they're doing good
Great
things
point.
for manufacturing, and hold everybody's feet to the fire to make sure that they're always focused on growth and competition, investment, and jobs.
Great point. Well, Jay, I'd like to thank you for your leadership and your organization in helping move our country forward. And Mark and Andra, I'd like to thank you for your leadership in Michigan. What you both are doing on the ground, especially in the urban areas, is so important, and we can't thank you enough. Please help me thank our panel.